Ever wonder who belongs on your team's Mount Rushmore? From record breakers to dynasty makers, sit back and enjoy as we take a deep dive into the four most important players of every NFL franchise. The San Francisco 49ers, Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, Steve Young, and Ronnie Lott.
Looking, throwing in the end zone. Caught it! Dwight Clark! It's a madhouse at Candlestick.
Joe Montana's game winner in the 1981 NFC Championship game set the stage for an 80s dynasty. He would go on to become the first player ever to win 3 Super Bowl MVPs. Montana perfected Bill Walsh's West Coast offense, winning the most games of any QB in team history. Until Tom Brady came around, Montana was the standard of excellence at football's most important position.
He's done it! Jerry Rice, in the 75-year history of the National Football League, is the touchdown scorer of the century.
This franchise landed the greatest receiver of all time in the 1985 draft. San Francisco traded up for Jerry Rice, and the rest is history. By year 2, he was the top receiver in the league. He scored 23 touchdowns in 12 games in year 3, and it all came together in his 4th season when he won Super Bowl MVP. Rice went on to capture 3 Lombardis in San Francisco, setting the all-time record for touchdowns along the way.
Now they do. They got a linebacker on him. Young comes out of there. Still on his feet is Steve Young, and Steve Young still going. Young cuts back. Young touchdown.
With plays like that, it must have been painful for the 49ers coaches to leave Steve Young on the sideline for 4 seasons. When Young finally did get on the field, he won MVP in 1992 and again in 1994, leading San Fran to its 5th Super Bowl win in team history. Young was truly a gifted thrower, pacing the NFL in passer rating 6 different times. He also left the game with the most rushing touchdowns of any quarterback in NFL history.
White, who is 8 for 10 today. And it's picked up by Ronnie Lott. Took it away from Drew Pearson.
Ronnie Lott's impact was felt from the very beginning. The rookie made first-team All-Pro in 1981, helping reshape San Francisco into Super Bowl champs. The 49ers finished with a top 5 scoring defense in 8 of Lott's 10 seasons with the team. He picked off 51 passes in San Francisco and was named All-Pro in 6 different years. They don't win 4 Super Bowls in the 80s without him. There's a deep pool of legends who have suited up for this franchise, so let's show some love to a few who missed the cut. Lineman Leo Nomellini was a first-ballot Hall of Famer and one of the best players of the 1950s. T.O. is the NFL's 2nd all-time leading receiver.
Owens! He caught it!
Joe the Jet Perry finished his career only behind Jim Brown in career rushing yards. His teammate Hugh McElhenney made it to Canton on the first ballot as well. The San Francisco secondary was patrolled by cornerback Jimmy Johnson for 16 seasons. We know you haven't forgotten Patrick Willis, an elite middle linebacker during his time. Y.A. Tittle was the Niners QB for 10 seasons, and his 1957 alley-oop pass to R.C. Owens is considered one of the best plays in team history.
This has got to be the alley-oop. There's no time for anything else. He's going downfield near the goal line. He goes up. He's got it!
And finally, there's the ageless wonder Frank Gore, the 49ers' all-time leading rusher. The Indianapolis Colts, Johnny Unitas, Peyton Manning, Geno Marchetti, and Marvin Harrison.
Back to throw. Fires long. Into the end zone. It's complete.
Before they were in Indy, Johnny U was the king of Baltimore. Unitas made the horseshoe famous across the country when millions watched him lead the Colts to victory in the 1958 NFL Championship game. He won league MVP 3 times, making the Pro Bowl in every season from 1957 to 1967. Unitas retired as the NFL's all-time leader in passing yards, touchdowns, and QB wins.
Snap is to Peyton. Protection stays in. He throws to Stokely. That's the record breaker. He broke it to Stokely.
Peyton Manning was born to play quarterback, attacking the position like a true field general. The second-generation signal caller lived up to the pressure of being a number 1 overall pick. Manning won 4 MVPs with the Colts and led Indy to their second Super Bowl win in 2006, 11 playoff trips, and 13 seasons for one of the most prolific passers of all time.
My vision of Geno is jumping over a fallen body that he just threw, and the quarterback's eyes getting about that big. That's my picture of Geno.
Known as the first elite defensive end in pro football history, Geno Marchetti was much more than a football player. He fought in the Battle of the Bulge at just 17 years old before his NFL days. While on the gridiron, he was named to the Pro Bowl in 11 of his 13 seasons, won 2 NFL titles, and was a 7-time All-Pro. Marchetti found himself on the first ballot of the Hall of Fame, and rightfully so.
Pump fake, and they go long for the first time for Harrison. Oh, my Lord! What a catch! One-handed, tuck it in, and he never used his left hand.
The Colts' all-time leader in catches, receiving yards, and touchdowns, Marvin Harrison, was automatic. The 8-time Pro Bowler shattered a then single-season record with 143 catches in 2002. He helped lead a golden age of Colts football as one half of a dominant receiving duo with Reggie Wayne. Harrison racked up over 1,100 career catches, third most ever by a wideout. Okay, who are the best of the rest? We just mentioned Wayne. He had 8 1,000-yard receiving seasons. Half a century prior to that, though, it was Raymond Berry who led the league in receiving 3 times. His teammate was all-time great tackle Jim Parker, another first-ballot Hall of Famer.
Unitas is back. Unitas throws. Goes for a touchdown. A magnificent pass pattern with Johnny Unitas.
Lenny Moore, he could do it all, scoring 113 career touchdowns. Edgerrin James was just as good, leading the NFL in rushing in each of his first 2 seasons. Hall of Fame D lineman Art Donovan played alongside Marchetti, torturing opposing quarterbacks. And Dwight Freeney did a pretty good job of that too, making 7 Pro Bowls with his patented spin move. The Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, Tony Gonzalez, Travis Kelce, and Derek Thomas.
First and goal. Mahomes flings it. It's there!
And Mahomes, he now has 3 Super Bowl wins in a span of 5 years.
Words can't describe what Patrick Mahomes has done for this once tortured franchise. Since the moment he took the reins as KC starter, the Chiefs have been perennial Super Bowl contenders. Mahomes has started the AFC Championship game in every season since 2018. He's a 2-time NFL MVP, 3-time Super Bowl MVP, and has produced one of the greatest highlight reels anyone has ever seen. What more could you want?
For Gonzalez. NFL history. No tight end in the NFL has ever caught as many touchdown passes as Tony Gonzalez.
Tony Gonzalez set a new standard for tight end play during his 12-year Chiefs career. He made the Pro Bowl in 10 of those seasons, by the way. Tony G was consistent no matter who KC had at quarterback. He notched 4 1,000-yard seasons, retired with the most receiving yards of any tight end ever. Gonzalez was a first-ballot Hall of Famer and one of the greatest pass catchers in history, regardless of position.
Looking to the end zone for the win! He caught it! Ball game! Chiefs to the championship game!
If Gonzalez set the standard, Travis Kelce has taken it to new heights. He's carved his own path among all-time greats, setting a single-season tight end record for receiving yards in 2020. The 3-time Super Bowl champ had 7 straight 1,000-yard seasons from 2016 to 2022. He's been Mahomes' go-to target in crunch time. No player in NFL history has more playoff catches.
Thomas is putting a clinic.
What a game he's had!
7 sacks in 1 game is a great way to get on Mount Rushmore. Derek Thomas was as ferocious as it gets during his 11 years with the Chiefs. Kansas City's all-time sack leader began his career as the 1989 Defensive Rookie of the Year. His 20 sacks in 2 years were tops in the league. He quickly became the AFC's version of Lawrence Taylor. Thomas was a 9-time Pro Bowler and discussed among the NFL's all-time greatest pass rushers. Now it's time to shed some light on the greatest era of Chiefs football before Mahomes came around.
The final artful stroke was a perfectly launched missile to Otis Taylor as Len Dawson destroyed the Steelers 31-14.
Len Dawson led Kansas City to its first ever Super Bowl in 1969. Hall of Fame linebackers Bobby Bell and Willie Lanier spent the 60s and 70s terrorizing opponents. Defensive tackle Buck Buchanan was a crucial part of that defense too. And while we're at it, Johnny Robinson and Emmett Thomas, who combined for 115 career interceptions in the Chiefs' secondary. And finally, there's Will Shields, one of the best guards in history, 12 Pro Bowls in 14 seasons. The New Orleans Saints, Drew Brees, Ricky Jackson, Cameron Jordan, and Willie Roaf.
Brees. Wide open. Wide open! What a way to do it! There's only one word that comes to mind. Greatness.
If there's one player who turned this franchise around, it's number 9. Drew Brees came to the Big Easy in 2006 when the city needed a rebirth after Hurricane Katrina. Brees led the charge, eventually taking the Saints all the way to the mountaintop in 2009. He's a 2-time Offensive Player of the Year and has more 5,000-yard passing seasons than any quarterback in history. 12 Pro Bowls and a magnificent 15-year Saints career.
They called him the Dome Patrol.
Wasn't nobody no better than us.
Entering the league in the same draft class as Lawrence Taylor, Ronnie Lott, and Howie Long will put you a bit under the radar. Seems like many have forgotten how great Ricky Jackson was. 6 seasons with 11+ sacks as a member of the famous Dome Patrol defense. Jackson made 6 Pro Bowls and registered the second most sacks in franchise history. He trails only this man in that category.
The game shut down by Cameron Jordan, who's had a standout performance, a 4-sack Thanksgiving night that will take New Orleans to the NFC South title.
Cam Jordan has wreaked havoc on quarterbacks since coming into the league in 2011. He's been named to 8 Pro Bowls and trails only Brees in total games played with the Saints. Jordan's been steady throughout his NFL run with more sacks than any player from 2012 to 2023, and that includes guys like J.J. Watt and Von Miller. Hall of Fame tackle Willie Roaf was a monster among men in his 9 seasons with the Saints. He made the Pro Bowl every year from 1994 to 2000 and may have been the best left tackle in the league for a majority of that stretch. Roaf made appearances on both the 90s and 2000s Hall of Fame All-Decade teams. Undersized but never unquestioned, Sam Mills was a fantastic linebacker on that Dome Patrol unit. Guard Jari Evans was a 4-time first-team All-Pro and started every game through his first 7 seasons. Archie Manning didn't do much winning with the Saints, but he did retire as the team's all-time passing leader thanks to plays like this.
Good protection for Manning. Lets it go. He's got Chandler.
The Buffalo Bills, Bruce Smith, O.J. Simpson, Jim Kelly, and Thurman Thomas.
Hostetler under heat, sacked for the safety. Bruce Smith.
We start off in Buffalo with the NFL's all-time sack leader. Bruce Smith led the way on defense for those great Bills teams of the 90s. He won Defensive Player of the Year twice and notched double-digit sacks in 12 of his 15 seasons in Western New York. Smith was named first-team All-Pro 8 times in a truly legendary career.
And the Juice should break the National Football League rushing record in this next series. Simpson running left. Simpson breaking loose. There it is. He's all right. All right.
The only player to rush for 2,000 yards in a 14-game season, O.J. Simpson's 1973 campaign is one of the best ever at any position. The former Heisman Trophy winner led the league in rushing 4 times between 1972 and 1976. He retired second only to Jim Brown in career rushing yards.
Down to 106 and running. Kelly goes deep. A flag is down. Has a receiver behind the secondary.
To come that close to 4 Super Bowls and get back up so many times has ultimately defined Jim Kelly's legacy. Sure, those Buffalo teams fell short, but they never went away. The class of the AFC for so many years, thanks to Kelly and the K-Gun offense, he won 101 games from 1986 to 1996, most by any NFL quarterback. He's the Bills' all-time leader in passing yards and touchdowns.
There's Kelly shotgunning, a running play. Thurman Thomas breaks it at the 25, still on his feet at the 20, gets down to the 15, the 10, the 5, and scores! Thurman Thomas!
One of only 2 Bills players in history to win NFL MVP, Thurman Thomas led the league in scrimmage yards every season from 1989 to 1992. The 4-time AFC champ was dynamic both running and catching the ball, scoring 80 touchdowns from 1989 to 1996, 4th most in the NFL. Thomas is Buffalo's all-time leader in scrimmage yards. Behind him sits Hall of Famer Andre Reed, who's also tied for the most touchdowns in team history.
Flea flicker, Collins. It's there. Andre Reed. Got it. Dale Carter. Reed and Carter going at it. And Reed gets away from him. Man. Touchdown, Bills.
Reed was a 7-time Pro Bowler and the team's all-time leading receiver. Josh Allen could jump up this list based on how his career is going, 220 total touchdowns from 2018 to 2023. Guard Joe DeLamalore paved the way for OJ on that Electric Company O-line. QB Jack Kemp won 2 AFL titles, still the only championships in team history. And we gotta mention Steve Tasker, widely regarded as the greatest special teamer of all time. The Minnesota Vikings, Fran Tarkenton, Adrian Peterson, Alan Page, and Chris Carter.
The coaches prefer that Tarkenton play it safe rather than risk injury, but sometimes Tark just can't resist the thrill of scooting past the big 250-pounders.
The scrambler of all scramblers, Fran Tarkenton made a name for himself with an uncanny knack for extending the play, and it worked wonders. He finished his career as the NFL's all-time leader in passing yards and touchdowns. Tarkenton won MVP in 1975 and had 2 separate awesome stretches in Minnesota. There's no way the Vikings get to 3 Super Bowls in the 70s without Tarkenton leading the way.
And this is Peterson. Into the open, midfield, 45, and there he goes! To the 10, touchdown!
It didn't take long for Adrian Peterson to establish himself as one of the league's greatest runners. In only his 8th appearance, Peterson set a single-game rushing record with 296 yards. He went on to win Offensive Rookie of the Year and later 3 NFL rushing titles. No season better than 2012 when Peterson rushed for well over 2,000 yards in an MVP campaign.
Alan Page has been all over the field all afternoon.
But it was Alan Page who really did it. Double H.
Page, number 88, in my opinion, is one of the finest defensive tackles in football.
The only defensive lineman to win NFL MVP, Alan Page showed his sheer dominance throughout an epic 12-year career in Minnesota. He played in 4 Super Bowls, leading the great Purple People Eaters defense. Page was named to 9 Pro Bowls, 5 All-Pro teams, and took home 1971 MVP. One of the best D linemen to do it ever.
Wade Wilson sprints back to throw. And he's going to throw a long bomb and a one-handed grab.
Carter, touchdown! The Vikings score!
Elite route running, incredible ball skills, and a pair of the most reliable hands in NFL history, Chris Carter racked up 8 straight 1,000-yard seasons with Minnesota from 1993 to 2000. He's the team's all-time leader in catches, yards, and touchdowns, and if it wasn't for Jerry Rice, we'd be talking about Carter as the best wideout of the 90s. So many greats who donned the purple jerseys. Let's quickly rattle off some honorable mentions. Hall of Fame trash talker John Randall has the most sacks of any D tackle in history.
You can't handle me, boy!
Guard Randall McDaniel was a 7-time All-Pro in 12 seasons with the Vikes. The freakishly gifted Randy Moss sits only behind Carter in most team receiving stats.
The catch from Moss. The flag is down, but he held on one-handed.
Center Mick Tingelhoff started every game in 17 seasons. Carl Eller lined up next to Page on that awesome D-line of the 60s and 70s. Hall of Fame tackle Ron Yeri played 14 seasons in Minnesota. Paul Krause is the NFL's all-time interceptions leader. Then you have all-pros like Kevin Williams, Chris Dolman, and Steve Hutchinson, who were all major contributors to the franchise. The Pittsburgh Steelers, Mean Joe Green, Ben Roethlisberger, Terry Bradshaw, and Jack Lambert.
Just remember Joe has been a good football player and not really mean.
An imposing sight for anyone who came near. 10-time Pro Bowler Mean Joe Green lived up to the nickname. He powered Pittsburgh's Steel Curtain, an elite unit for 13 seasons. The Steelers boasted a top 10 total defense 9 times from 1969 to 1979. Green won 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards and 4 Super Bowls. Talk about decorated.
Washington outside left. Roethlisberger. Last time, throws to the back of the end zone, and it is caught for a touchdown by Holmes.
We've celebrated the catch, but that ball was on the money when it mattered most in Super Bowl 43. Big Ben Roethlisberger came through in big-time moments, winning 2 titles in his first 5 seasons. He's the team's all-time leader in every major passing stat. He played in 23 playoff games and has more career wins than any player in team history.
Here is Bradshaw. Bothered from behind. Lynn Swann is open. Got it. Steeler touchdown.
Before Ben, there was Bradshaw. With a cannon for an arm, this gunslinger went on to guide Pittsburgh to the greatest stretch in team history. Terry Bradshaw's Super Bowl throws are stuff of legend, but did you know he also won NFL MVP in 1978? He led the league in passing touchdowns twice, too. But we'll always remember his dimes on the game's biggest stage. Lambert or Ham, it's like splitting hairs between these 2 Hall of Fame Jacks.
I am the quarterback right now. Down the middle, it's going to be picked off by the Steelers. Jack Lambert looking for somebody to lateral to, keeps it himself, stays on his feet.
We gave the slight edge to Lambert, who won Defensive Player of the Year in 1976. If Green led the defensive line, it was Lambert who led this stellar linebacking unit. Playing in the middle, he was named first-team All-Pro 6 times. Pittsburgh had a top 5 scoring defense in 7 seasons from 1974 to 1984, thanks in big part to 58. It was nearly impossible to pick just 4 players from this storied franchise, perhaps the toughest omission being Troy Polamalu.
How about that? Oh my goodness. Gosh, is that spectacular. Before the snap of the ball.
Nobody did it quite like Troy. He helped bring 2 titles to the Steel City. We mentioned Jack Ham earlier, a vital member of that dominant 70s defense, as was cornerback Mel Blount, the 1975 Defensive Player of the Year. Franco Harris gave us arguably the greatest play in NFL history.
That's caught out of the air. The ball is pulled in by Franco Harris. Harris is going for a touchdown for Pittsburgh.
Let's go all the way back to defensive tackle Ernie Stotner, who made 9 Pro Bowls in 14 seasons with the Steelers in the 50s and 60s. 5-time All-Pro Rod Woodson was a first-ballot Hall of Famer. The duo of John Stallworth and Lynn Swann made play after play in the biggest moments. Offensive linemen solidified the Steelers' trenches in 3 separate eras. And speaking of strength, don't forget the bus, Jerome Bettis, one of the league's greatest power backs. The Seattle Seahawks, Steve Largent, Russell Wilson, Walter Jones, and Bobby Wagner.
And that'll do it. A new NFL record for Steve Largent.
He walked away from the game as the NFL's all-time leader in touchdown catches, 100 of them to be exact. Steve Largent made 7 Pro Bowls in his 14-year Seahawks career. The sure-handed wideout led the league in receiving yards in both 1979 and 1985. Largent was a rock on the Seattle offense, catching at least 6 touchdowns in 10 different seasons.
Wilson toward the end zone. It is caught! Seattle's going to the Super Bowl!
The greatest QB in franchise history, third-round draft pick Russell Wilson was a gift to Seattle fans in 2012. The rookie took over the starting job and never let go, leading the Seahawks to their first Super Bowl win in 2013. Wilson's ridiculous scrambling ability drew comparisons to Tarkenton. He won 66% of his starts in 10 years with Seattle, not to mention 9 Pro Bowls in that stretch.
Come on, Walt. Mr. Jones, let's run this thing all the way in.
And the offensive linemen are shredding him right now.
He powered one of the greatest offensive lines we've ever seen. Left tackle Walter Jones paved the way for Sean Alexander's MVP campaign and kept Matt Hasselbeck's pocket clean in Seattle's 2005 Super Bowl run. Jones was a first-ballot Hall of Famer who was named to 9 Pro Bowls in 12 seasons with the Hawks. He's up there among the all-time greats at his position.
Blitz, Cousins in trouble, buried, Bobby Wagner for 2.
Picked in the same draft as Wilson, Bobby Wagner was the quarterback of Seattle's defense for more than a decade. He played maybe the most important role in the league's #1 scoring defense from 2012 to 2015. Wagner led the NFL in tackles 3 times and was named All-Pro in 6 seasons. Perhaps the best middle linebacker of his era and will no doubt be in Canton someday. Defensive tackle Cortez Kennedy should be in the conversation too, seeing as how he won Defensive Player of the Year in 1992. Safety Kenny Easley did the same in 1984. The Hall of Famer made the most of his 7 NFL seasons. Running back Sean Alexander scored 100 rushing touchdowns in 119 games in Seattle. And then there's Beast Mode, who delivered some of the most thrilling runs we've ever seen.
That's as good an effort as I've ever seen in my life from a running back.
A pair of DBs round out the group with lockdown corner Richard Sherman and versatile safety Earl Thomas. The founding fathers of the Legion of Boom were the best at their positions in Seattle's heyday. The Cleveland Browns, Jim Brown, Otto Graham, Joe Thomas, and Lou Groza.
Gives to Jim Brown. He gets away to the right side. He gets a block from Hickerson. Jim Brown to the 20. Jim Brown is in for the touchdown.
Without a doubt, the top player to ever put on the orange helmet, Jim Brown took the league by storm in 1957. He's still the only rookie to win MVP. Brown led the NFL in rushing in 8 of his 9 career seasons and helped Cleveland win the league championship in 1964. He ran over, around, and past would-be tacklers in a way the NFL had never seen. The 3-time MVP is widely regarded as the greatest pro football player of all time.
When it comes to winning, no quarterback in NFL history can equal the stature of Otto Graham.
Tom Brady before Tom Brady? Otto Graham. He was the ultimate winner. He played in either the AAFC or NFL championship game in all 10 of his seasons, winning 7 of those title games, by the way. Leading the charge for Cleveland, Graham topped the league in passing yards twice and won 80% of his NFL starts. He could do no wrong, even pouring on 33 career rushing scores.
Great block from Joe Thomas.
You know, for my money, I think he's the best in the business at what he does.
10 Pro Bowl trips in an 11-year career. Does it get any better than Joe Thomas? The steady left tackle made the Hall of Fame on the first ballot, and it's no wonder why. Thomas started 167 consecutive games during a period that many Browns fans would like to forget. But that's no shot at Thomas, who many consider the best left tackle of his era. The 6-time All-Pro quietly dominated for over a decade.
Groza will attempt the field goal. It'll be 15 yards. He puts the ball. It's up in the air. Score!
The biggest kick of Lou Groza's career won the 1950 championship in the Browns' first NFL season. But that was just the start. An original member of the franchise, Groza went on to play 21 seasons in Cleveland, retiring as the NFL's all-time scoring leader. He played offensive tackle too, winning a total of 8 pro football championships in his storied career. Aptly nicknamed the Toe, Groza's scoring records lasted for decades. Hall of Famer Ozzie Newsome barely missed the cut here. He led all tight ends in career receiving yards when he left the game.
Side to Dyson, chase the throws. Intercepted and knocked away. Caught by Ozzie Newsome.
A couple members of the Forgotten Four have to be mentioned. Marion Motley and Bill Willis helped reintegrate pro football in 1946. They were both All-Pros, NFL champs, and Hall of Famers. And of course, there's Leroy Kelly, who twice led the NFL in rushing after replacing Jim Brown. The New York Giants: Lawrence Taylor, Emlyn Tunnell, Mel Hein, and Michael Strahan.
Sanderson looking in, zone for a pass. He's looking for King, intercepted. He's going to go down the right side. Lawrence down to the 20, 30, down to the 40. He might go all the way. He is not only big and tough and active, he is also quick.
The most feared defensive player to ever play the game, Lawrence Taylor was a nightmare for NFL offenses. He single-handedly changed how defenses could attack, rushing the passer from the outside linebacker position. Taylor earned Defensive Player of the Year honors in his very first season. He's the only linebacker to win NFL MVP and led the Giants to their first Super Bowl win in 1986. LT was named All-Pro in 8 of his 13 seasons.
Drops into the waiting arms of Emlyn Tunnell, and he does what the New York fans have been hoping for all afternoon as he dodges away from the outstretched hands, and a touchdown to the New York side of the scoreboard.
He picked off at least 6 passes in each of his first 10 seasons. Emlyn Tunnell is one of pro football's great ball hawks. The safety was named to the Pro Bowl in every season from 1950 to 1957, earning 4 All-Pro bids in that span as well. The Giants' great sits second all-time with 79 career interceptions. And did we mention he could return kicks too? Tunnell had the most punt return yards in the league from 1949 to 1952.
Mel Hein, the greatest center in the league.
Hein was the cornerstone around which the Giants built their franchise.
Playing 15 seasons, all with the G-men, center and linebacker, Mel Hein was a true 60-minute man. Before position specialization came to be, guys like Hein had to play both ways. He started 7 NFL championship games and was named All-Pro at center in 8 consecutive seasons.
Peterson gets time, the pass is blocked, and it's intercepted! Michael Strahan heading for the end zone! Strahan, touchdown, and the Giants win!
Another Giants stalwart, Michael Strahan, played all 15 seasons in New York as well. In 2001, he set a new single-season record with 22.5 sacks on his way to winning Defensive Player of the Year. Strahan led the NFL in tackles for loss in 3 different seasons and sits just a half sack shy of LT on the team's all-time leaderboard. He was named All-Pro 4 times, played in 2 Super Bowls, and captured the Lombardi Trophy in his final season.
Under pressure, avoids the rush, and he's going to fight out of it. Still fights out of it. Wide open Tyree, who makes the catch. What a play by Manning.
What a play. This team won't quit.
Eli Manning is a big reason why the New York Giants won that night. He's the 2-time Super Bowl MVP and the team's all-time passing leader. Frank Gifford was another tough cut, considering he accounted for 92 career touchdowns. Hall of Fame offensive tackle Rosie Brown made 9 Pro Bowls in 13 seasons. Legendary linebacker Sam Huff won an NFL title in New York, as did Harry Carson, a major component of that Bill Parcells defense. Defensive end Andy Robustelli was a 4-time All-Pro with the Giants, and Tiki Barber leads the franchise in yards from scrimmage. The Houston Texans: J.J. Watt, Andre Johnson, Dwayne Brown, and DeAndre Hopkins.
Batted down and intercepted. Intercepted by J.J. Watt. Touchdown, Houston.
One of only 3 players in NFL history to win 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards, J.J. Watt at his peak was as dominant as it gets. He had 16-plus sacks in 4 different seasons. The only other guy to do that was Reggie White. Watt helped the Texans win their first playoff game ever with a pick-6 in the 2011 AFC wildcard game. He finished second in MVP voting in 2014 and was named All-Pro 5 times.
A score of any time wins it.
Bubble screen to Johnson, Andre Johnson! Here he goes! Touchdown to cap a brilliant day!
The Texans' all-time leading receiver gets a spot on Houston's Mount Rushmore. Hall of Famer Andre Johnson helped jumpstart the expansion franchise with his elite playmaking ability. He went on to 7 Pro Bowls in 12 seasons with the team. Johnson amassed over 1,500 receiving yards in 3 different seasons and had a way of making the impossible look routine.
credit Dwayne Brown for that entire drive. Entire drive, running and throwing, kind of belonged to Dwayne Brown, opening up holes for Arian Foster.
Stellar offensive tackle Dwayne Brown enjoyed 10 great seasons in H-Town. The Texans had a top 10 scoring offense every year from 2009 to 2012, with Brown playing a big part. He was named to the Pro Bowl in 3 straight years from 2012 to 2014.
To be part of a great team, here's Hilton blitzing off the slot again. Passer Hopkins, oh my goodness. Did he catch that? Did he catch that? That's the touchdown catch of the year if that's good. That's unbelievable. Wow. That's sick.
Texans fans should feel blessed with 2 all-time pass catchers falling into their laps within a 10-year span. DeAndre Hopkins picked up right where Johnson left off, making 3 straight All-Pro teams. From 2014 to 2019, D-Hop ranked 2nd in the NFL in total catches, receiving yards, and touchdowns. He had a pair of 1,500-yard seasons in Houston and led the league with 13 touchdown grabs in 2017. Before we move on, we should shout out Arian Foster, the most dynamic runner in team history. Foster was the 2010 NFL rushing leader and twice led the league in total touchdowns. The Chicago Bears: Walter Payton, Dick Butkus, Sid Luckman, and Mike Singletary.
Walter Payton becomes the National Football League all-time leading rusher.
Sweetness set a standard for football excellence during his illustrious career in Chicago. Walter Payton put the Bears on his back in 1977, winning NFL MVP. 10 seasons with over 1,500 yards from scrimmage, the most all-time. Payton is also the team's leader in receptions, believe it or not. He won a Super Bowl in 1985 and retired as the league's all-time leading rusher.
His 9-year career stands apart as the single most sustained work of devastation ever committed on a football field by anyone, anywhere, anytime.
8 Pro Bowls and 9 seasons is good enough to sell us on Dick Butkus. His career didn't last long, but he's known as the best linebacker in Bears history, and that's saying a lot. Butkus was named All-Pro in 5 seasons and finished among the top 5 in NFL MVP voting multiple times. More than just a tackling machine, Butkus secured 49 career takeaways, almost one in every other game.
He was named league MVP in 1943, and his Bears dominated the decade.
The greatest quarterback in Bears history played all the way back in the 1940s. Hall of Famer Sid Luckman led the league in passing 3 times, and get this, he led Chicago to 4 NFL titles. The franchise's best years were guided by Luckman, who threw for the 2nd most yards and touchdowns throughout the 1940s. He was a 5-time All-Pro, and Bears fans have waited over 70 years to find a better quarterback.
We're gonna be here all day, baby! I like this kind of party!
Can't talk about the 85 Bears without this man. Middle linebacker Mike Singletary was the heart and soul of what many consider the greatest defense in NFL history. Singletary made 10 Pro Bowls in a 12-year Bears career. He captained a unit that finished top 5 in points allowed every year from 1983 to 1988. Singletary won 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards and went to Canton on the first ballot. Chicago may have been the toughest team to choose from, and you can certainly make a case for any of the following players.
Once in a generation or a lifetime, the great runner arrives in pro football.
Swiss Army knife Gale Sayers was an All-Pro in each of his first 5 seasons. Mike Ditka, he was the first tight end to go for over 1,000 yards in a season. Brian Urlacher won the Defensive Player of the Year award in 2005 and led Chicago back to the Super Bowl a year later.
Hester 5. Oh! Touchdown Bears! No way!
Simply put, Devin Hester is the greatest returner to ever do it. 50 years earlier, Bill George was setting the example for Bears linebackers. Hall of Fame D-end Richard Dent was MVP of Super Bowl 20, and before him, pass rusher Doug Atkins won 2 NFL titles in the 50s and 60s. Fullback Bronco Nagurski powered Chicago to 3 championships back in the 30s. Center and linebacker Bulldog Turner was a 7-time All-Pro, and bear with us as we go way back to Red Grange, the NFL's first superstar in the 1920s. The Miami Dolphins: Dan Marino, Larry Zonka, Jason Taylor, and Larry Little.
Marino rolls for a touchdown and there's the record. Breaks the all-time NFL record.
Dan Marino's draft slide worked out perfectly for the Dolphins, who landed the star in 1983. In just his second year, Marino obliterated the single-season records for passing yards and touchdowns. Well ahead of his time as a pure passer, Marino threw 122 touchdowns from 1984 to 1986, 42 more than the next guy. He led the NFL in passing yards 5 times and retired with the greatest career numbers of any quarterback ever.
Third quarter when they've had the ball, which hasn't been much. Another big hole open. Going through is Zonka, the 40, 30, just belted one man out of the way.
The engine of Miami's ground game, Larry Zonka, helped the Dolphins capture back-to-back Super Bowls in the 1970s. Zonka had 1,000 rushing yards in each season from 1971 to 1973, forming what's now known as the perfect backfield alongside Mercury Morris and Jim Kick. Zonka leads all Miami ball carriers in both rushing yards and touchdowns.
Now Achilles Smith is indeed going to throw. He's stripped to the ball, just what they were worried about, and on the run is Jason Taylor, heading to the end zone, and he's in.
The best pass rusher in Fins history, Jason Taylor, was a sack machine in his 13 seasons with the club. He won Defensive Player of the Year in 2006 with 13.5 sacks, 9 forced fumbles, and 2 pick sixes. Taylor was a 3-time All-Pro and led the league in sacks in 2002. As versatile a D-end as you'll ever see, he had 131 career sacks, 35 takeaways, and 9 touchdowns in Miami.
Larry Little, number 66. A human size, famous for cutting down cornerbacks.
Guard Larry Little was a huge reason why the Dolphins had their way in the run game for all those years. The Hall of Famer made 5 straight All-Pro teams, winning a pair of Super Bowls with Zonka and company. Little missed just 2 games from 1970 to 1979. His teammate, one spot over on the O-line, was Jim Langer, an elite center for a decade. Could have slotted him or Dwight Stevenson up there. The latter snapped to Dan Marino in the 80s and eventually made it to Canton as well. Quarterback Bob Greasy made 8 Pro Bowl trips in a decorated Dolphins career. Finally, there's great Zach Thomas. The undersized linebacker recorded 150 tackles in 6 different seasons.
And Zach Thomas with the interception. Hello, Zach. Zach Thomas has just set a Miami record with his 4th career interception return for a touchdown.
The Carolina Panthers, Steve Smith, Luke Kuechly, Cam Newton, and Julius Peppers.
Overtime quarter number 2. He's got time, throws downfield. Smith at the 45 to the 40. Breaks free.
It's
20,
over.
10, 5, touchdown! Woo! Touchdown, Steve Smith!
The great Steve Smith headlines a younger Mount Rushmore in Carolina. One of just 5 players in the Super Bowl era to win the receiving Triple Crown, Smith dominated in 2005. He's the Panthers' all-time leader in catches, receiving yards, and touchdowns. He could talk the talk and walk the walk, posting 7 1,000-yard seasons with the Panthers.
A record-setting year. He's picked again. Kuechly for the touchdown.
Standout linebacker Luke Kuechly was an instant hit in Carolina, winning the 2012 Defensive Rookie of the Year. Kuechly went on to have over 1,000 tackles in just 8 NFL seasons. His finest year came in 2013 when he won Defensive Player of the Year, the first player in team history to do it. Kuechly was a 7-time Pro Bowler and 5-time All-Pro who was surely bound for the Hall of Fame.
3 wide receivers. Olsen, the tight end motion. Newton's got it, and he's got a big hole. Cam Newton taking off. Will they get him? Touchdown!
An imposing athlete who also happened to play quarterback, Cam Newton made it known right away that he belonged in the NFL. The 2011 Offensive Rookie of the Year racked up 14 rushing touchdowns, setting a new QB record. He would be named MVP just 4 years later when he took the Panthers to their 2nd ever Super Bowl. Newton's the team's all-time leader in passing and rushing touchdowns.
Get him moving a little.
Pump fake, he's hit. Oh, the ball is close, and Julius Peppers had it. So long, Peppers.
The number 2 overall pick in 2002 sure lived up to the billing. Like Kuechly and Newton, defensive end Julius Peppers also took home Rookie of the Year honors. He had 6 seasons with double-digit sacks with the Panthers and formed a front four that led Carolina all the way to Super Bowl 38. Peppers went to a handful of Pro Bowls with the Panthers and is the team's all-time leader in sacks. Gotta show some love for a couple other Carolina stars. Thomas Davis was a mainstay at outside linebacker for 14 seasons. And wideout Masin Muhammad was a supremely underrated target who led the NFL in receiving in 2004.
Masin Muhammad with his 3rd touchdown of the day.
Wow. And it was All-Pro Sam Mills who delivered the keep pounding mantra that has since become the Panthers' rallying cry. The Philadelphia Eagles, Chuck Bednarik, Reggie White, Steve Van Buren, and Brian Dawkins.
One of the great two-way players of all time is Concrete Charlie, Chuck Bednarik, who was a World War II veteran, played 14 seasons in the National Football League, starring at linebacker and center.
Concrete Charlie, linebacker and center, Chuck Bednarik was one of the league's last two-way players. He played his entire 14-year career in Philly after the Eagles took him number 1 overall in the 1949 draft. Bednarik was named first-team All-Pro 6 times and led the Eagles to 2 NFL championships. He missed only 3 games his entire career.
1st and 10 Giants. Rutledge comes back to throw and is hammered by Reggie White.
The greatest pass-rushing defensive end in the National Football League.
The Minister of Defense is without question on Philadelphia's Mount Rushmore. In just 8 seasons with the Eagles, Reggie White notched 124 sacks, nearly 16 per season for those doing the math. He won Defensive Player of the Year in 1987 with, get this, 21 sacks in just 12 games. That's absurd. White could toss linemen with ease and eat up all who came close. He was selected All-Pro 6 times in Philly.
With the championship riding on his shoulders, Steve Van Buren blast off right tackle for the game-winning touchdown.
The game-winning touchdown in the 1948 NFL title game sealed Steve Van Buren's legacy as an Eagles legend. He led the NFL in rushing in 4 different seasons and held the club's career touchdown record for over 30 years. Van Buren had the most all-purpose yards in the NFL from 1944 to 1951, and no one really even came close. 5 All-Pro selections, 2 NFL championships, and a spot on Philly's Mount Rushmore.
Little pump fake. Now over the middle. Crumpler, what a throw, what a hit, what a catch. Algie Crumpler hung on after getting a vicious blow from Brian Dawkins.
Weapon X, Wolverine, whatever you want to call him, Brian Dawkins was going to come to play. Intense as they come, B-Doc could cover the entire field and make you pay for any mistake. He's tied for the most interceptions in Eagles history and made 7 trips to the Pro Bowl while in Philly. Dawkins was a key player on Jim Johnson's defense that helped turn around Philly's fortunes in the 2000s. As was Donovan McNabb, the team's all-time leader in passing yards and QB wins. Before him, there was Randall Cunningham, too.
And we are looking at Rambling Randall once again.
A trailblazing dual threat, Cunningham finished second MVP voting twice. Recently retired Jason Kelce was maybe the best center of his generation. Don't sleep on this trio of Hall of Fame wideouts either. Harold Carmichael is Philadelphia's all-time leader in touchdowns. Pete Pihos led the league in catches every year from 1953 to 1955. And Tommy McDonald helped the Eagles capture the 1960 NFL crown. The Los Angeles Chargers, LaDainian Tomlinson, Junior Seau, Dan Fouts, and Lance Allworth.
Skirts it outside, into the end zone. Charger fans are witnesses to history.
Production galore throughout LT's entire Chargers career. The greatest back in team history provided Chargers fans and fantasy owners with a bunch of enjoyable Sundays. Tomlinson started his career with 8 straight seasons of 1,500-plus scrimmage yards. He led the league in rushing twice, and in 2006 set a new NFL single-season record with 31 touchdowns.
And the 4. Bono stepping up and then hauled down. Junior Seau with the sack. It is a one-man defensive show by Junior Seau.
The Bolts of the 90s were led by a linebacker that seemed to be everywhere at all times. Junior Seau truly had a nose for the ball, and his 155 tackles in 1994 propelled the Chargers to their only Super Bowl appearance in team history. Seau was named to 12 Pro Bowls and 13 seasons in San Diego. His 200 games played are the most by any Chargers defensive player ever.
Going deep for Chandler.
Before Justin Herbert, Phillip Rivers, Drew Brees, there was Dan Fouts. The Chargers quarterback of the 70s and 80s revolutionized the modern aerial attack alongside mastermind Don Coryell. Fouts had 3 straight seasons with 4,000 passing yards from 1979 to 1981, unheard of at that time. San Diego made back-to-back AFC title games in those early 80s, and Fouts was Offensive Player of the Year in 1982. He had to be on this list.
Could run and jump like nobody's ever played this game, and a beautiful pair of hands that could catch anything thrown in his direction.
Okay, here's where it gets a little debatable. We're giving the final spot to Bambi, aka Lance Allworth, who was arguably the best receiver in pro football throughout the 1960s. He was a first-ballot Hall of Famer who led the AFL in receiving 3 times. In 1963, he led the Bolts to their only pro football championship to this day. He had a total of 72 touchdowns from 1963 to 1968. Now, you could absolutely make the case for either Phillip Rivers or Antonio Gates here. Number 17 retired as the club's all-time leader in QB wins and passing yards. Gates, meanwhile, has the most touchdown catches of any tight end ever.
112 career touchdown catches. That's the most by an NFL tight end.
The two combined for an absurd 89 touchdowns. Kellen Winslow was excellent in his own right. In 1980, the Hall of Famer set a then tight end record for catches and yards. We'll also add offensive tackle Ron Mix to the conversation. He was a 9-time AFL All-Pro. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Derek Brooks, Warren Sapp, Leroy Selmon, and John Lynch.
3rd and 18, and this is going to write a finish. Derek Brooks, who ran back 3 interceptions for touchdowns in the regular season, does it to cement the Super Bowl.
Derek Brooks was the top player on one of the greatest units of all time, leading the 0-2 Bucs to their first Super Bowl title. He won Defensive Player of the Year that season with 5 return touchdowns, including the playoffs. Brooks was an 11-time Pro Bowler and had 100-plus combined tackles every season from 1996 to 2007. You'll notice defense as the prevailing theme of this franchise.
Shovel pass, picked off. Touchdown, Sapp!
Big man Warren Sapp spent 9 seasons in Tampa, wreaking havoc on the opposition. The 4-time All-Pro was one of the most talented defensive tackles that has ever stepped foot on the gridiron. Sapp won Defensive Player of the Year in 1999 and followed that up with a 16.5 sack campaign.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers select
Leroy Selmon, defensive end, Oklahoma.
The first ever draft pick in Bucs history went on to become the first Hall of Famer in Bucs history. Leroy Selmon was a rare bright spot for an otherwise downtrodden franchise. An original Buccaneer back in 1976, Selmon played his entire 9-year career in Tampa. He won Defensive Player of the Year in 1979, leading the Bucs all the way to the NFC title game. Selmon went on to make the Pro Bowl in each of his final 6 seasons.
John Lynch decleated him.
Hard-hitting safety John Lynch could change the game in the blink of an eye. Like Sapp and Brooks, Lynch helped lay the foundation for a dominant defense in the late 90s and early 2000s. He was a 5-time Pro Bowler with the Bucs and notched 80 or more tackles in 6 of his seasons in Tampa. Lynch played alongside Rondé Barber in the secondary, a special player who barely misses out on a top 4 selection here. Barber played his entire 16-year career with the team and delivered probably the greatest play in Bucs history.
That's picked off. That's picked off. And who else? Rondé Barber. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may ride to the Super Bowl with that one.
Did you know Mike Evans is the only receiver in NFL history to start his career with 10 straight 1,000-yard seasons? He's been automatic since entering the league. And if you don't remember the A-Train, let us remind you.
once again.
Puts his shoulder down and just runs flat over people.
Mike Alstott is the team's all-time leader in rushing touchdowns and is completely deserving of an honorable mention among Buck legends. The Baltimore Ravens, Ray Lewis, Jonathan Ogden, Ed Reed, and Lamar Jackson.
Good protection. Intercepted by Ray Lewis, and Lewis is on his way. He's going to go for a touchdown.
The heart and soul of this franchise, Ray Lewis is in the pantheon of all-time middle linebackers. He was the second draft pick in Ravens history and would go on to lead them to their first Super Bowl in 2000. Lewis won 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards and led the league in tackles 3 times, 12 Pro Bowls, 7 All-Pro selections, and a pair of Lombardi trophies for the best linebacker of his time.
There's a lot of great left tackles, and there's a lot of great left tackles in the Hall of Fame. But I don't know any left tackle that played it better than Jonathan Ogden played the position.
Jonathan Ogden was simply unfair. The 6'9" tackle overpowered all who came before him and made the Pro Bowl in all but one of his 12 seasons. He kept the pocket clean for a revolving door of quarterbacks and helped Jamal Lewis rush for over 2,000 yards in 2003. Ogden played his entire career in Baltimore, winning a title with Lewis in that special 2000 campaign.
Cobb throws, end zone intercepted. Ed Reed's got it. 10-yard line coming back. He gets by Cobb at the 30-yard line. Sheds a tackle at midfield.
Perhaps the most dangerous ball hawk to ever hit an NFL field, Ed Reed was a football magnet. He ranks 7th all-time with 64 career interceptions and won Defensive Player of the Year in 2004. Reed could do just about anything he wanted in his 11 seasons with the Ravens, 9-time Pro Bowler, 5-time All-Pro, and a Super Bowl champ in 2012.
Here's a second down and 3. Jackson takes it himself. Look at him turn back and forth. Oh! He broke his ankles. Now he's got an entourage, and he's got a touchdown.
He'll likely go down as the greatest dual-threat quarterback in league history. Lamar Jackson's playmaking ability has led him to 2 NFL MVP selections in a span of 5 seasons. He's won 75% of his starts since 2018, gaining the most yards on the ground by any quarterback in that stretch. He's thrown 125 touchdowns to just 45 picks in his short career. The sky's the limit for that guy. A handful of fantastic Ravens should be mentioned in the conversation too. Guys like Terrell Suggs, who won Defensive Player of the Year in 2011. Joe Flacco's 2012 postseason is the best ever for a quarterback. He led Baltimore to 6 playoff trips. Justin Tucker could be the best kicker in history when it's all said and done.
On its way. It bounces off the crossbar, and it's good! Oh my goodness!
Guard Marshall Yanda made 8 Pro Bowls, while Jamal Lewis was just the 5th player ever to rush for 2,000 yards in a season. The Arizona Cardinals, Larry Fitzgerald, Larry Wilson, Aeneas Williams, and Dan Deerdorf.
Warner has time. Fitzgerald into Steeler territory. 30, 20, 10. Arizona has the lead.
The greatest moment in recent Cardinals memory, provided to us by the greatest player to ever suit up with the franchise. Larry Legend ranks 2nd in all-time catches and receiving yards behind only Jerry Rice. The 11-time Pro Bowler led the league in touchdown catches twice and went on an absolute tear in the 2008 playoffs, obliterating numerous records.
This is the face of an all-pro safety. Larry Wilson led the National Football League in interceptions with 10.
Hall of Fame safety Larry Wilson had 7 career defensive touchdowns, none better than this one. In 1966, he led the league with a career-best 10 interceptions. Wilson was the best at his position for a 5-year stretch in the late 1960s. The 8-time Pro Bowler still ranks 1st among all Cardinals in career picks.
About still having a starter. And maybe he should leave his starters in a lot longer because Aeneas Williams has just turned it into a ball game.
Aeneas Williams is number 2 on that interceptions list. He picked off 46 passes in 10 fantastic seasons with Arizona. Williams made the Pro Bowl every year from 1994 to 1999, competing with the likes of Deion Sanders and Darrell Green. His 8 career defensive scores, the most in club history.
Here he comes. 3 times
times in his career, the rest of the players around the league voted him the best offensive lineman.
Most of you know Dan Dierdorf as a color commentator for over 30 years, but did you know he was a Hall of Fame offensive lineman as well? Dierdorf lined up in the trenches for 13 seasons back when they were the St. Louis Cardinals. He played his entire career there, making 6 Pro Bowls and 3 All-Pro teams. The big tackle helped the Cardinals go 31-11 from 1974 to 1976. Shutdown corner Roger Worley is enshrined in Canton with 40 picks in his 14-year Cardinals career. And since we're on elite cover guys, we gotta show some love to Pat P.
And it is Patrick Peterson who comes up with the spectacular interception. Wow.
Patrick Peterson made the Pro Bowl in each of his first 8 seasons in the NFL. And lastly, there's the uber-versatile Charlie Trippi, who tallied touchdowns in 5 separate ways. The Hall of Famer helped the Cardinals win the 1947 NFL title. The New England Patriots, Tom Brady, John Hanna, Rob Gronkowski, and Ty Law.
We're bringing this sucker home! Tom Brady!
Tom Brady brought 6 of those trophies back to Foxborough in the most prolific career we've ever seen at the QB position. The NFL's all-time passing leader won 77% of his starts with the Patriots. Brady went from obscurity to stardom in a magical 2001 campaign, the start of a 2-decade dynasty. The GOAT won 3 league MVPs and an absurd 17 AFC East titles.
My goal was very simple. I wanted to be the best offensive guard that ever played football.
Arguably the greatest guard in NFL history, John Hanna is etched in Patriots lore. The big man missed just 5 games from injury in 13 seasons. He was named first-team All-Pro 7 times and was a no-brainer first-ballot choice for the Hall of Fame. In 1978, New England broke the team record for rushing yards in a single season, with Hanna leading the charge.
Here's Brady. Pass. What a catch! Gronkowski, touchdown!
No one did it quite like Gronk. He burst onto the scene with 10 touchdowns as a rookie, then followed that up with a league-leading 17 in 2011. That's still a tight end record, by the way. Gronkowski had 4 1,000-yard seasons and was named All-Pro in each of them. As Brady's favorite red zone target, he caught 79 touchdowns in New England, the most in team history. At his peak, there wasn't a better tight end.
And Warner goes back to throw, and here's the blitz by Mike Vrabel. The pass is intercepted. Picked off by Ty Law. 30, 25, 20, 15, touchdown!
A moment that made Pats fans feel like the Lombardi Trophy was attainable. Ty Law's Super Bowl pick 6 is one of the greatest moments in franchise history, but Law did much more. He's tied for the most interceptions among all Patriots and had a league-high 9 of them in 1998. The Hall of Famer led a secondary that allowed just 29 total touchdown passes from 2003 to 2004, both Super Bowl seasons in New England.
He was one of the few players that offensive coordinators had to game plan for.
Andre Tippett's 100 career sacks ranked number 1 for his prestigious franchise. Fellow Hall of Famer Richard Seymour was a huge part of the 2000s dynasty. Corner Mike Haynes was the 1976 Defensive Rookie of the Year and made 6 Pro Bowls with the Pats. How about Mr. Patriot Gino Cappelletti, the 1964 AFL Player of the Year, led the league in scoring 5 times. The Detroit Lions, Barry Sanders, Joe Schmidt, Calvin Johnson, Bobby Lane.
Sometimes you just got to look to the heavens and say, wow. When God created Barry Sanders, even he didn't know what he made.
Detroit's most gifted runner of all time never had a dull moment. Barry Sanders played 10 of the best seasons you'll ever see, racking up over 1,000 yards on the ground in each of them. With cat-like quickness, Barry embarrassed defenders on his way to winning 4 rushing titles. The 1997 NFL co-MVP retired number 2 on the all-time rushing list.
Everybody leaves the stadium with one word on their lips, and that's Joe Schmidt.
The Lions found a gem deep in the 7th round of the 1953 draft. Linebacker Joe Schmidt helped Detroit win the NFL title in his very first season. He would go on to play all but 2 games through his first 10 campaigns. Schmidt was named first-team All-Pro 8 times and is right up there with Bill George and Sam Huff among the greatest linebackers of the 50s.
Looking deep,
Throw into the end zone, wants Calvin, well covered. He goes up, he makes the catch. Are you kidding me? Oh, Megatron, you did it again.
There have been 3 players to be enshrined in the Hall of Fame at age 35 or younger: Gale Sayers, Jim Brown, and Calvin Johnson. Megatron's 9-year career in Motown was full of mesmerizing highlights, a physical force. Johnson towered over defenders and ran right past them. His 2012 campaign was one for the ages as he set the single-season receiving record with nearly 2,000 yards.
So for the second year in a row, the Professional Football World Championship goes to the Detroit Lions.
He's the most successful QB in team history. Bobby Lane guided the Lions to back-to-back NFL championships in 1952 and 1953. He led the league in passing in each of his first 2 seasons in Detroit. His 26 touchdown passes in 1951 were a club record for 44 years. From 1950 to 1957, Lane led all NFL passers in yards and touchdowns. You gotta go all the way back to the Portsmouth Spartans, where Dutch Clark began his career. A runner, passer, and kicker, he was named All-Pro in 6 of his 7 seasons. Hall of Fame cornerback Lem Barney had 56 career picks. Do-it-all playmaker Doak Walker won 2 scoring titles, 2 NFL titles, and made 5 Pro Bowls in just 6 seasons.
Matthew Stafford comes out, numbers he put up this season, nothing short of terrific, 5,038 yards.
The team's all-time passing leader gets an honorable mention too. Matthew Stafford had at least 4,000 yards in 7 straight seasons. The great Lou Creekmur powered Detroit's O-line during the greatest era in team history. 3-time NFL champ Yale Larry had 50 career interceptions and led the league in punting average 3 times. And finally, there's Hall of Fame safety Jack Christensen, another elite DB for those 50s Lions. The Denver Broncos: John Elway, Terrell Davis, Shannon Sharpe, and Von Miller.
Elway scrambling, looking, running, diving inside the 5-yard line for a first down.
The greatest Bronco in history led Denver to 5 Super Bowl appearances in a special 16-year career. John Elway had the second most passing yards in the league from 1983 to 1998, and his 148 wins are easily the most in team history. Elway won MVP in 1987, then a passing title in 1993. It took him 15 years to finally win the big one, but he went out in style with back-to-back Lombardis before riding off into the sunset.
Davis breaks a tackle. He's got 2,000.
Elway's late career success was due in large part to the emergence of running back Terrell Davis. The 6th-round pick won a pair of Offensive Player of the Year awards and leads all Broncos in career rushing yards. Davis won Super Bowl 32 MVP, leading the Broncos to their first ever NFL title. He followed that up with a 2,000-yard season in '98, winning league MVP in the process.
Again, has time, goes to the end zone, has a man open, has it. And it is Shannon Sharpe.
The great Shannon Sharpe is one of only 5 tight ends in NFL history with 10,000 receiving yards. He was John Elway's favorite target throughout the 90s, leading Denver in catches, yards, and touchdowns that decade. Sharpe's brash style made him an unforgettable character that you will see on TV today. He made 7 Pro Bowls with Denver and was a big part of those championship teams in '97 and '98.
The Panthers have a 3rd and 10. Here comes pressure, and they've gotten to him. The ball is out in the end zone. It was Von Miller with the strip sack.
Do the Broncos win Super Bowl 50 without the MVP performance of Von Miller? The 8-time Pro Bowler struck fear into the hearts of offensive tackles across the league in his 11 seasons with Denver. Miller is the team's all-time sack leader and had 7 campaigns with 10 or more. His ability to bend, dip, and maneuver around blockers was uncanny, and he should be in Canton on the first ballot. Can't mention Broncos legends without these guys. Champ Bailey locked down receivers for a decade, making 8 Pro Bowls in Denver. 2-time Super Bowl champ Steve Atwater was a heat-seeking missile at free safety.
Okoye up the middle, and he is knocked dead in his tracks. What a hit.
Atwater.
Wow, what a sock by Atwater.
Hall of Fame runner Floyd Little led the league in rushing in 1971. Linebacker Randy Gradishar was Defensive Player of the Year in 1978. And Peyton Manning had the most prolific 3-year stretch we've ever seen from a quarterback, 131 touchdown passes from 2012 to 2014. The Los Angeles Rams, Aaron Donald, Merlin Olsen, Deacon Jones, and Jack Youngblood. We challenge you to find a better defensive front in any team's history.
Burrow trying to keep it going, gets spun down, gets it away, and incomplete.
I mean, he's saying right there is where I want my ring.
10 years of excellence. Aaron Donald's decade in the NFL was about as good as it gets. A Pro Bowler in every season he played, AD would win Defensive Player of the Year 3 times. His 111 career sacks are officially the most in team history. He was at the top of his game with a league-high 20.5 in 2018 as LA won an NFC crown. He finally led the Rams to the ultimate prize in 2021, sealing the deal in Super Bowl 56.
Whether he's a left or a right guard, if he pulls the trap, it's not going to work either way. You run into Merlin Olsen, and he's huge.
From one elite defensive tackle to another, Merlin Olsen was named to the Pro Bowl in each of his first 14 seasons. That's mind-blowing. LA finished with a top 10 total defense 13 times during Olsen's 15-year career. The Iron Man only missed 2 games, and that was in his first season. He suited up for 208 of them as the anchor of the Rams' fearsome foursome.
Deacon at one time had a challenge race for anyone on the team. Any amount of money they wanted to bet, 50-yard dash, and he was never beaten.
And Dave Jones is in to drop him for a 17-yard loss.
If Olsen was the anchor, Deacon Jones was the star of that standout front four. He played 11 seasons with the Rams and notched close to 160 sacks, unofficially, of course. Jones was a 14th-round steal for LA, who landed arguably the greatest pass rusher to ever live. He made 7 straight Pro Bowls from 1964 to 1970, with 5 All-Pro selections in that stretch as well.
You could feel the knot, you could feel where the leg had been broken. The doctors are all looking at it and they're feeling it and they're going, no, you can't do this. I said, tape the thing up and we'll worry about it when the game's over.
Ultimate tough guy Jack Youngblood went through most of the 1979 playoffs with a broken leg. Nothing stopped him from taking the field as he started a franchise record 201 straight games in his 14-year NFL career. Youngblood joined the tail end of that fearsome foursome unit and went on to make 5 All-Pro teams from 1974 to 1979. He's unofficially credited with over 150 career sacks. An extraordinary number of stars have come through the franchise, and Jackie Slater can say he's played more games than any of them. The first ballot Hall of Famer played 20 years at tackle, including 18 postseason games.
27-yard line, Warner to throw. Going deep downfield, adjusting for it is Isaac Bruce, and Isaac Bruce threads his way for a touchdown.
Isaac Bruce retired with the second most receiving yards in NFL history. Kurt Warner won 2 MVPs in a 3-year span. Orlando Pace protected the blind side for 12 seasons in St. Louis, making 7 Pro Bowls. One of the most versatile backs we've ever seen, Marshall Faulk won Offensive Player of the Year 3 times.
He's got it, and a brand new single-season rushing record for the outstanding star from Southern Methodist.
Nobody has topped Eric Dickerson's single-season rushing record in 40 years. Quarterbacks Bob Waterfield and Norm Van Brocklin each led the Rams to NFL championships in the 40s and 50s. Those great teams could chuck it down the field thanks to Hall of Famer Elroy Crazy Legs Hirsch, the 1951 NFL receiving Triple Crown winner. The Jacksonville Jaguars, Tony Baselli, Jimmy Smith, Fred Taylor, and Mark Brunell.
A great battle brewing right now between Bruce Smith and Tony Baselli, and this is an unbelievable performance by a guy that is the best young tackle in the National Football League, bar none.
The only Jag in the Hall of Fame, left tackle Tony Baselli was one of the best at his position during his 7 years in the league. Baselli played all of them in Jacksonville, the first draft pick in team history. He made 5 Pro Bowls and 3 All-Pro squads, helping the expansion Jaguars get to the playoffs in 4 of their first 5 seasons.
Brunell on the fade. Touchdown to Jimmy Smith. Can't throw it any better.
Jacksonville wouldn't have had that early success without franchise-leading receiver Jimmy Smith. Released from the Cowboys, Smith revitalized his career in Florida with 9 1,000-yard seasons and 11 years with the Jaguars. He made 5 Pro Bowls and teamed with Keenan McCardle to form one of the league's scariest receiving duos. Smith's 116 catches in 1999 topped all NFL wideouts.
He knows he doesn't have a big play team, and Jacksonville does.
Draw play.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Brock Marion
and chasing. Touchdown, no flags. A 90-yard run.
If you followed this channel, you know we love us some Fred Taylor. Truly an underappreciated talent, the playmaker leads the club in all-time rushing yards. Taylor was sensational over his 11-year Jaguars career, gaining 1,000 yards on the ground in 7 of those seasons. He battled injuries throughout his career, but at his peak, he was among the NFL's best.
1st and 10 now at the 43. Play fake. Brunell deep. Right side for Smith, double coverage, caught, touchdown!
Since we're on the topic of underrated, let's go ahead and shout out the greatest quarterback in team history. Mark Brunell led the league in passing during his famous '96 season when Jacksonville finished 1 game shy of the Super Bowl. He led the Jags to 4 playoff appearances, 2 AFC title games, and could launch the ball with the best of them. A special runner who just missed the cut, Maurice Jones-Drew, followed Taylor admirably in Jacksonville's backfield. MJD was the 2011 NFL rushing leader and leads all Jaguars in career rushing scores. The Washington Commanders, Sammy Baugh, Darrell Green, John Riggins, and Art Monk.
Sammy Baugh was the first big-arm quarterback in the National Football League.
Slingin' Sammy Baugh revolutionized the passing game when he arrived on the scene in 1937. Baugh led the league in passing and led Washington to an NFL title as a rookie. He broke the all-time passing record in his 7th season, then went on to play another 9 campaigns. Baugh was a great safety, too, picking off 31 career passes, including 11 in one season, and on special teams, he led the NFL in punting average 5 times.
Down the sideline, Tony Dorsett. And look who caught him. And Tony Dorsett goes down. Only one man on the field could catch him, Darrell Green, the world-class sprinter from Texas A&I.
Probably the fastest player to ever play in the league, Darrell Green played a franchise record 295 games. He picked off a pass in 19 different seasons and had 54 total throughout his career. Green was a rock in the Washington secondary, playing 18 postseason games, including 3 Super Bowls. His clutch punt return in the '87 NFC Divisional sealed a big-time upset win over Chicago.
There's the snap, hand to Riggins, good hold, he's got the first down to the 40, he's gone, the 35, the 30, the 20, he's gone!
The Diesel powered Washington to a title in 1982. John Riggins carried the ball 136 times that postseason, more than any other player in a single playoff run. He's the club's all-time leader in rushing yards and touchdowns. He set an NFL record with 24 scores in 1983, leading Washington to its 2nd straight NFC championship.
Art Monk has just broken the National Football League record for receptions in a single season.
The first player in NFL history to catch 100 passes in a season, Art Monk was a huge piece on Washington's title teams of the 80s and 90s. No player in the league had more total catches from 1980 to 1993. Monk is the team's all-time receiving leader and had 5 1,000-yard seasons. His play went up a notch in the playoffs with over 1,000 yards in 15 postseason games. 90-plus years of history will get you a ton of outstanding players. Charlie Taylor's 90 touchdowns are the most in team history. Joe Theismann led Washington to a Super Bowl in 1982 and won MVP in 1983. Rocket-armed gunslinger Sonny Jurgensen led the NFL in passing 3 times with the team.
Marcus Washington loses it. Walt Harris, no, it's Sean Taylor's got it, and he's off to the races again. 15, 10, 5, there are no flags, touchdown, Sean Taylor.
The late, great Sean Taylor was a special talent. The Hogs paved the way for 3 championship teams thanks to All-Pros Russ Grimm and Joe Jacoby. Hall of Fame linebacker Chris Hanburger played all 14 seasons in the nation's capital, making 9 Pro Bowls. Running back Larry Brown was the first player in team history to win MVP. And ferocious pass rusher Dexter Manley won 2 Super Bowls, leading the Washington defense. The New York Jets, Joe Namath, Don Maynard, Curtis Martin, and Darrelle Revis.
Been hearing that all week long. I got news for you, buddy. We're gonna win the game, I guarantee it. That's all there was to it.
We know all about Joe Namath's guarantee of an upset in Super Bowl III, so let's shed some light on how great he actually was as a passer. After winning AFL Rookie of the Year in 1965, Namath became the first player to throw for 4,000 yards in a season a couple years later. He was an AFL Player of the Year in 1968, the only championship season in franchise history.
Namath looking for the end zone, throwing, touchdown to Maynard! Joe Namath throwing to Don Maynard!
Hard to think New York wins that lone Super Bowl without the club's all-time receiving leader Don Maynard, an original member of the franchise back when they were the New York Titans. He amassed 5 1,000-yard seasons in the 1960s. Maynard was a 4-time AFL All-Star and led the league in receiving yards back in 1967.
Martin, right side, following a block, breaks through to the 5. Oh, touchdown!
You know we had to put one of the most consistent rushers ever up here. Curtis Martin averaged close to 1,300 yards on the ground in 8 seasons with New York, winning the rushing title in 2004 at age 31. Martin often felt overshadowed by the likes of Emmett, Falk, and LT, but no player in the league had more rushing yards from 1998 to 2004. That's why he made it to Canton in only his second year of eligibility.
Has time. To Revis, interception. Revis down the side, cuts back to this side, one block, and he's gone! Darrelle Revis all the way home!
Nobody shut down their side of the field quite like Darrelle Revis. Perhaps the best corner of his era, Revis was as good as we've seen in his first 5 seasons. A first-team All-Pro in 3 straight seasons, he helped the Jets make back-to-back AFC Championship games in 2009 and 2010. Revis had 31 pass breakups in 2009, most in the league. New York boasted a top 10 pass defense 5 times, with Revis Island in full effect. How about some big guys getting in the mix? New York's O-line was led by Hall of Famer Kevin Mawae for 8 seasons. Offensive tackle Winston Hill made 8 Pro Bowls in 14 seasons with the Jets. Defensive tackle Joe Klecko and his 20.5 sacks in 1981 were topped only by fantastic D-end Mark Gastineau, who set a single-season record with 22 of them in 1984. The Dallas Cowboys, Roger Staubach, Emmitt Smith, Bob Lilly, and Randy White.
Roger, he's going long. Down the near sideline for Drew Pearson. Pearson makes the catch at the 5, touchdown! Would you believe it? Staubach hit Pearson on a 50-yard touchdown.
A pro's pro, Roger Staubach helped put America's team on the map. The 70s Cowboys were a special unit led by Captain Comeback, who won 75% of his career starts. After serving in the Navy, Staubach didn't become Dallas's full-time starter until age 29. From there, he guided the Cowboys to a pair of Super Bowl wins and led all NFL quarterbacks in passer rating in 4 different seasons.
Emmitt Smith has just become the NFL's all-time leading rusher.
The NFL's rushing king. Enough said. Did Emmitt Smith have a dominant O-line? Of course, but it's hard to discount someone who showed up and produced for 13 seasons at that position. Smith's crowning achievement came in 1993 when he won the NFL MVP and a second straight Lombardi. In 1995, he set the single-season touchdown record en route to a 3rd Super Bowl ring. Hard to think his records will ever be topped. The first ever draft pick in the storied history of the Dallas Cowboys, Bob Lilly played every single game in 14 standout seasons at defensive tackle. The Hall of Famer was named first-team All-Pro 7 times in an 8-year span, not to mention 11 Pro Bowl selections. Lilly anchored a Dallas defense that finished top 10 in points allowed for 12 straight seasons. He's up there in the pantheon of all-time defensive linemen.
Riley Odom's in motion. Morton fakes, and the rush is on from Randy White, and down goes Morton.
We don't hear the name Randy White all that much these days. Surely names like Aikman and Irvin immediately come to mind when talking about Cowboys greats, but we're giving the nod to White. Like Lilly, he was named All-Pro 7 times in an 8-year stretch. He finished in the top 5 of Defensive Player of the Year voting 6 times. White was co-MVP of Super Bowl XII and a first-ballot Hall of Famer.
Aikman.
We just mentioned the prolific passing duo, and they're right up there in the conversation. Two of the three Dallas triplets led a franchise resurgence in the 90s. Guard Larry Allen was a monster who mauled his way to 10 Pro Bowls with the Cowboys. The great Tony Dorsett won a Super Bowl as a rookie and went on to have 8 1,000-yard rushing seasons. Hall of Fame corner Mel Renfro leads the franchise with 52 career interceptions. His teammate Cliff Harris was right there by his side, winning 2 titles in the 70s. DeMarcus Ware leads all Cowboys in career sacks, and though his stint in Dallas was just a handful of years, Prime Time put on a show in D-Town.
Also live from Green Bay, and this is picked off by Deion Sanders. Deion outracing Brett Favre and scoring for Dallas.
Don't forget about a pair of star wideouts either in Bullet Bob Hayes and Drew Pearson. You can't tell the story of the Cowboys without them. And playing an incredible 16 years with Dallas, tight end Jason Witten ranks 4th in NFL history in career catches. The Tennessee Titans, Bruce Matthews, Earl Campbell, Warren Moon, and Steve McNair.
And who's taking over on the inside but Bruce Matthews, squishing people in there.
When you play 19 seasons and 296 games with a single franchise, chances are you'll have your name on this list. Entering the league in the star-studded class of 1983, offensive lineman Bruce Matthews may have been the greatest player in the pool. 14 Pro Bowls, 7 first-team All-Pro selections, and he spent time at each position on the O-line. He blocked for every other member of this Mount Rushmore at one point.
On 2nd and 8, Campbell just outruns everyone to the right, and look out!
He's gone!
He may take it all the way. Puts his head down, 80-yard touchdown, this is over.
The Tyler Rose, Earl Campbell, stepped onto the scene in 1978 and was instantly in the conversation among the greatest running backs in the league. Campbell led the NFL in rushing in each of his first 3 seasons, winning MVP in 1979. His relentless power at the position made him nearly impossible to bring down. Campbell was a 3-time Offensive Player of the Year and a first-ballot Hall of Famer. The most productive quarterback in team history is none other than Warren Moon. In fact, from 1984 to 1993, only one player had more passing yards than Moon. That would be Dan Marino. He was named to 6 Pro Bowls in his decade with the Oilers. Moon also led Houston to 6 playoff appearances in a 7-year span. He paced the league in passing twice and was the 1990 Offensive Player of the Year.
McNair stepping up.
You got him.
Rolling, needs help, stays on his feet somehow, throws, 11-yard line, it's caught, first down.
While Steve McNair and the Titans fell short in that thriller, it's still the only Super Bowl appearance in team history. No quarterback in club history has more wins as a starter than McNair. He finished 3rd in MVP voting in 2002, then split the award with Peyton Manning in 2003. Always a threat as a scrambler, he ran for more yards than any other quarterback in team history. An original Houston Oiler way back in 1960, quarterback George Blanda led the AFL in passing yards twice while capturing a couple league titles. No player in pro football history had ever had 1,500 yards in a season before Charlie Hennigan came around. He did it twice, including over 1,700 yards in 1961.
2nd and goal. George again. George breaking tackles into the end zone.
The franchise's all-time rushing leader gets a mention here too. Eddie George was the epitome of smash-mouth football. Can't talk about Oilers greats without Hall of Fame guard Mike Munchak, who made the Pro Bowl 9 times in 12 seasons. A special quartet of defenders begins with linemen Elvin Bethea and Curly Culp, who set the tone up front in 3 different decades. The aptly named safety Ken Houston had 10 defensive touchdowns in his 6 years with the team. Linebacker Robert Brazile was the 1975 Defensive Rookie of the Year and a 7-time Pro Bowler. And we must mention King Henry, one of only 8 players ever to rush for 2,000 yards in a season. The Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, Bart Starr, and Don Hutson.
Can the receivers get far enough down the field? Rodgers in trouble. It's going to get there. He turned 32 yesterday. Does he have a vintage moment in him? In the end zone, it is caught for the win!
You don't earn the moniker of Titletown without some serious difference makers at quarterback. Green Bay's Mount Rushmore begins with Aaron Rodgers, one of the most skilled throwers to play in the league. Rodgers is a 4-time NFL MVP and led Green Bay to a win in Super Bowl 45. He's the Packers' all-time leader in passing touchdowns, and his 122.5 rating in 2011 is an NFL record.
Two tight ends set up for the Packers, and Favre back to throw his first one. Going deep. Has a man open. Favre got settled down in a hurry.
29 years removed from their previous Super Bowl, the Packers finally reached the mountaintop thanks to Brett Favre. The great gunslinger won 3 straight MVPs from 1995 to 1997 and led the NFL in passing touchdowns 4 different times. Favre ranks first all-time among all Packer quarterbacks in passing yards and wins, but stats aside, it's the way he played the game that earned him icon status in Green Bay.
Starr begins the count. Takes the snap. He's got the quarterback sneaking. He's in for the touchdown, and the Packers are out in front. And the Green Bay Packers are going to be world champions.
No quarterback in team history has brought more championships back to Titletown than Bart Starr. The Pack won it all in 1961, 62, and 65, then later went on to capture the first 2 Super Bowls, 5 rings for the first ballot Hall of Famer. Starr was named to 4 Pro Bowls and led the league in completion percentage numerous times. He won NFL MVP in 1966 and took home 2 Super Bowl MVP trophies as well.
Don's blazing speed made him hard to cover. This time, watch him take a long throw from Herbert, good for 6 points.
He's the NFL's first dominant receiver. Back in Don Hudson's day, they were known as ends, and this guy was the best of all of them. He racked up 99 career touchdown catches, a record that stood for 44 years. Hudson played 11 NFL seasons and led the league in receiving 7 times. Aside from all the individual stats, Hudson led Green Bay to 3 NFL titles from 1936 to 1944. We could have gone with Hall of Fame tackle Forrest Gregg, who made 7 All-Pro teams in a 15-year career with Green Bay. While Starr led those 60s Packers on offense, linebacker Ray Nitschke was the leader of the defense, securing 5 NFL titles.
There's Bledsoe. Down he goes. And there's Reggie White.
Reggie White, the first marquee free agent in NFL history, he helped Green Bay win Super Bowl 31 and took home Defensive Player of the Year in 1998. Corner Herb Adderley was a 5-time All-Pro who's also in Canton. 1962 MVP Jim Taylor mastered Vince Lombardi's sweep, and his 81 rushing touchdowns were the most in team history. Outstanding center Jim Ringo made 6 All-Pro teams in a 7-year span. D-end Willie Davis and corner Willie Wood were vital pieces of Green Bay's 5 championships in the 60s. 8-time Pro Bowler James Lofton retired as the team's all-time leading receiver. And did you know, safety Leroy Butler is credited with the first ever Lambeau leap.
And Evans gets the pass off, but hit at the 37 was Randy Jordan, and Leroy Butler picks up the loose ball.
The Cincinnati Bengals, Anthony Munoz, Ken Anderson, Chad Johnson, and Ken Riley.
Hand off, no Boomer running around to the right. Looks, throws into the end zone to Anthony Munoz. Touchdown.
In the conversation for the best offensive tackle of all time, Anthony Munoz made 11 Pro Bowls in a 13-year Hall of Fame career. He blocked for MVP quarterbacks Ken Anderson and Boomer Esiason and started 2 Super Bowls in the 1980s. Munoz was a key piece in an offense that finished top 10 in scoring 7 times during his career. He was named All-Pro in 9 seasons, and it's hard to think of a better left tackle.
While it's true that many stars have shone in Cincinnati, without Anderson, they would not have had near the glitter.
The ultra-underrated Ken Anderson is Cincinnati's all-time leader in passing yards and quarterback wins. He was at his peak in 1981, winning NFL MVP and leading the Bengals to the first Super Bowl trip in team history. Anderson played all 16 seasons in Cincinnati, guiding the team to 4 playoff trips. He won back-to-back NFL passing titles in 74 and 75 and led the league in completion percentage 3 times.
Yeah, sombrero and poncho.
Chad Johnson on the sideline
got on a knee like he was proposing to Daphne over there.
The river dance? Come on, are you kidding me? In Chicago?
Perhaps the most creative celebrator we've seen come into the league, Chad Johnson was just as talented catching the ball. He's the Bengals' all-time leader in catches, receiving yards, and touchdowns. Johnson racked up 1,000 yards in 7 seasons and won the receiving title in 2006. Along with Carson Palmer and TJ Houshmandzadeh, Johnson re-energized a dormant franchise throughout the 2000s.
Quick shot out in the flat. It's intercepted by Kenny Riley, and it'll be a touchdown. Down to the 10-5. Touchdown. Kenny Riley picked off Jack Thompson's first pass out in the left flat.
If Ken Anderson was underrated, Ken Riley was downright snubbed. Finally making it to the Hall of Fame 40 years after he retired, Riley was a thief on the outside for 15 seasons. He played his entire career with the Bengals and finished with 65 interceptions, tied for 5th most all-time today. Yet somehow, Riley never made a single Pro Bowl. He's one of 11 players in NFL history with an interception in 15 different seasons. Joe Burrow is well on his way to jumping from the honorable mention category. He's the first quarterback in team history with back-to-back AFC Championship game appearances. 1988 MVP Boomer Esiason led Cincy to Super Bowl 23.
Dalton throws. A.J. Green at the 50. Green off to the races. Green still going. A.J. Green at the 5. Touchdowns.
Spectacular playmaker A.J. Green made the Pro Bowl in his first 7 seasons. 12-year offensive tackle Willie Anderson missed just 2 games in his first 11 years. Geno Atkins anchored the D-line, making 8 Pro Bowls in the 2010s. And the best running back in team history gets some love too. Corey Dillon broke a 23-year-old record for single-game rushing yards in 2000. The Atlanta Falcons. Julio Jones, Matt Ryan, Deion Sanders, and Michael Vick.
Pocket collapsing, Ryan rolling, looking, just going to throw it deep for Jones, double coverage. Oh, what a catch! Touchdown!
And Julio Jones up and over, posterizes Luke Kuechly. What a play!
Arguably the greatest player in franchise history, Julio Jones was absolutely dominant for a decade in Atlanta. The 7-time Pro Bowler had the most receiving yards in the league from 2011 to 2020, his entire tenure with the Falcons. Julio was a gifted playmaker who holds club records for receptions and yards. He even had 300 in a single game.
Great protection. Looking down the field in the end zone, and it is a touchdown!
That's a heck of a throw by Matt Ryan.
If Jones is the best, Matt Ryan is the most impactful. He brought instant credibility to a struggling franchise, consistently among the top 10 passers in the league over his 14-year Falcons career. Ryan put it all together in 2016. He won NFL MVP and led Atlanta to its 2nd Super Bowl berth ever. No quarterback in team history has more passing yards, touchdowns, or wins.
Deion drifts to the left, takes it on the 32, dropped it, picked it up, one man missed him, another man missed him. Now he's going wide off to the right. Deion to the 25, to the 30, to the 35, the 40, the 45, the 50, the 45, the 40. My God, Deion Sanders is going to score. My God.
Prime time was sensational from the moment he took the field. His first ever touch resulted in a touchdown. Sanders notched 24 picks and scored 10 total touchdowns as a corner and return man in 5 seasons with Atlanta. He helped the Falcons make the playoffs in 1991 and was named All-Pro twice.
Vick on 2nd and 8, off the play fake, has some running room, inside the 30, inside the 20, Vick into the end zone, Falcons win in overtime.
Michael Vick retired as the greatest running QB in league history. His raw talent electrified the city of Atlanta and propelled the Falcons to a massive upset of the Packers in the 2002 wild card. Vick took Atlanta to the NFC title game in 2004 and 2 years later became the first QB in NFL history to rush for 1,000 yards in a season. Now, these next 2 guys have every right to be up on Atlanta's Mount Rushmore as well.
But the man the Falcons count on the most for the big play is number 87, Claude Humphrey. He was named Falcon of the Year by his teammate.
Hall of Fame D-end Claude Humphrey led Atlanta to 6 top 10 finishes in total defense. Go look up their 1977 team. Only 9.2 points per game allowed, the fewest by any NFL team since 1950. Humphrey had plenty to do with that. Offensive tackle Mike Ken started all 251 career games, 5th most by any offensive lineman ever. He played all 17 career seasons in Atlanta, making 5 Pro Bowls along the way.
We're tied at 6. Picked off by Jesse Tuggle. He's all alone. Tuggle with the score.
Linebacker Jesse Tuggle led the NFL in tackles in 4 seasons, and longtime center Jeff Van Note's career spanned 18 seasons, 5 of which resulted in a Pro Bowl selection. The Las Vegas Raiders, Gene Upshaw, Ken Stabler, Tim Brown, and Marcus Allen.
We're number 1. That's it. We're number 1.
Up there with John Hanna among the greatest guards ever, Gene Upshaw played every single game in his first 14 years with the Oakland Raiders. This was the greatest era in franchise history, and the first ballot Hall of Famer had a lot to do with it. A 7-time Pro Bowler and 5-time All-Pro, the Raiders won 73% of the games during Upshaw's 15-year career.
Here he is, fading, looking. He's under the gun. He's tied, he throws. It is! He caught it! Unbelievable!
He produced the most memorable play in Raiders history, but Ken Stabler's toss into a sea of hands was the precursor to his crowning achievement a couple years later. The 1976 Raiders finally won it all with Stabler leading the way. Snake paced the league in passing touchdowns twice and won NFL MVP in 1974. The consummate winner, Stabler was victorious in 72% of his starts in Oakland.
There's nobody open. And finally, Tim Brown breaks open. He got by Eugene Robinson. He's got one man to beat. Touchdown, Raiders!
Today's conversations about the greatest wideouts in history will include names like Rice, Moss, Fitzgerald, and Megatron, but have we forgotten about Tim Brown? He played 16 seasons, retiring top 3 in all-time catches and receiving yards. Brown notched 1,000 yards in 9 straight seasons from 1993 to 2001. His 240 games played are the most in franchise history by a non-kicker.
Crockett giving to Allen, sending him wide left. He has to reverse his field, but he gets away for a moment. Comes back up the middle of the 30, 25, 40. Breaks past 2 men at the 50, down to the 40. Picking up a blocker to the 20, to the 10, to the 5. Touchdown Raiders!
The greatest run in Super Bowl history, brought to you by the legendary Marcus Allen. The USC Heisman winner won 1982 Offensive Rookie of the Year. Allen was Super Bowl MVP a year later, then NFL MVP in 1985. He scored 98 total touchdowns from 1982 to 1992, second most in the league during that stretch. A complicated last few years with the Raiders, but there's no discounting his greatness. We split hairs trying to create this Raiders Mount Rushmore, and you could easily add any combination of the following players. 10-time All-Pro center Jim Otto was an original member of the team in 1960, and he played every game of his 15-year career.
The 6'1" wide receiver from Florida State has quietly been glue-fingering hundreds of receptions.
Hall of Fame receiver Fred Biletnikoff won Super Bowl XI MVP and made 6 Pro Bowls. A staunch offensive tackle, Art Shell helped secure 2 championships with the Raiders. Howie Long was relentless, making 8 Pro Bowls in 13 years. Old man Willie Brown was a 4-time All-Pro at corner, and his Super Bowl pick 6 is among the club's most iconic plays. There's the speedy Cliff Branch, a playmaker on all 3 Raiders Super Bowl winning teams.
Manning throwing. Woodson!
Last but certainly not least, there's Charles Woodson. The 1998 Defensive Rookie of the Year went on to make 5 Pro Bowls with the Silver and Black.